Ballistic. You're listening to Stars and Stripes.
It's been a while, but ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stars and Stripes. Season 2 rolling out. The U.S. men's national team has qualified for the 2022 World Cup, and this is where the real fun begins. We have no more anxiety about whether we're going to qualify or not. This is where all the fun stuff is, the cool stuff, the cool conversations, the stuff that you guys want to hear, transfers, everything. We're going to be loading out tons and tons of content leading up and throughout the World Cup in 2022. Ryan, it is great to be back, isn't it, my friend?
Yes, sir. I mean, it's been a while, but, like you said, no stress, no anxiety. So I think we've kind of got an opportunity to relax because we're not worried, are we going to repeat 2018 again? Are we going to be out there at the World Cup? No, we made it. We're ready to go out there. And now it's just kind of now it's the smaller conversations that have to take place. Who's going to be there? How are people doing in their clubs and transfers and everything? But I think that big conversation is finally off our back, and it feels good. And now just time to build the excitement.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously there's a lot of work to be done before the World Cup for the U.S. kicks off against Wales on November 12th out there in Doha. And the first thing that we really got to discuss here is the transfers. Obviously it's the summer, so a lot of movement between clubs. Major players have made moves to big time clubs. Lots of tons of links, a lot of BS we got to sort through. But I think the first place we got to talk through is Leeds. And it's damn near become the American embassy over in England with now that Tyler Adams, Brendon Aaronson have linked up with Jesse Marsch.
Look, before we get into everything else too, it's like, this is the summer. If you're kind of on the edge, the fringe, this is a summer where you absolutely need a move. And we've seen some big moves, but we also haven't seen some other big moves from players that may be on the cusp. So, but like you said, at Leeds, those are two big players who have got moves that could potentially play in their favor for the best when going towards the World Cup, especially Brendon Aaronson going over to Leeds. We know he's kind of been on the outs, whether it's Weah, Gio Reyna, Aronson. This move may give him the opportunity to solidify himself as that number 3, that third guy up front. So I think that's a great opportunity for him, and not to mention Tyler Adams.
Yeah, if we start this conversation with Brendon Aaronson, I think he's going to be absolutely fantastic at Leeds. He fits exactly the type of system that Jesse Marsch is looking for. That's the reason he signed him with RB Salzburg when he was the manager there over in Austria. Brendon Aaronson absolutely killed it there, won a couple of league titles, and now he's coming over, and immediately he's had an impact just in preseason with his ability, just that energy that he has and that he plays with. There are not many players around the world that have that energy and the quality and talent that he brings to the table.
Yeah, and look, it's going to be a totally different game. This is the Premier League that he's coming to play in now, and it's not Austria. I mean, he skipped the German part of the Salzburg. I mean, the Red Bull track. But look, this is the Premier League. So, without getting too excited, like you said, I think Leeds in particular is going to be great for him because of his ability, his athleticism. That's the team. I mean, probably where some of the most athletic players in the league play just because of their style. So I think it's going to be perfect for him. And especially obviously under that kind of management, he's going to get the opportunity to prove himself before the World Cup. So I think at this point in his career, it's the best sort of option he can make.
Yeah, both these guys I think are going to be crucial players come game one throughout the season and throughout the whole World Cup cycle and everything. I mean, when you look at Tyler Adams, that's another guy that Jesse Marsch has worked with since he was a young kid. Remember, he worked under Jesse Marsch at New York Red Bulls and at RB Leipzig. So it's another player that Marsch knows fits his style. He's grown up with him. The communication's there. They know what they want from each other. And just based on the squad that Leeds has, both of these guys, you could argue, are going to be two of their most, if not the two most important players alongside the likes of Patrick Bamford and their goalkeeper next season.
I mean, exactly. And it's nothing to do with them being American and, serving under an American manager. But I think it's just down to the fact that these guys were perfect signings for Leeds. So I think it's definitely going to play into their favor, and hopefully Leeds can get the best out of them. I mean, I know that they kind of get blown out at times, but as it's looking, they've had a strong preseason. So who knows what they have to come? They're kind of looking have a different look to them now going into this next season, and they're looking sharp. So let's hope these two boys can do their best.
This might be a little bit of a bold prediction, but I think Brendon Aaronson next season in the Premier League is a really good shout as a young player of the year candidate. I think he is going to be absolute dynamite in the Premier League. That guy just does not get tired. His motor is unlike almost any player the US have ever had in that regard. And these guys are replacing big time players for Leeds. So it doesn't come without pressure, but having Jesse Marsch be there, I think kind of relieves that pressure from the fans being like, okay, we have to replace Rafinha and Calvin Phillips, who've moved on to massive clubs. But I think they're both ready for the challenge.
Yeah, and that's something.
You go.
No, that's something that we got to consider as well, because as much as excited we want to get to see these guys at Leeds, you can't compare Tyler Adams and Calvin Phillips. You can't compare Brendon Aaronson and Rodrigo. It's it would be naive of me to say that it's not a downgrade, which it is. I hate to say it, but so it comes with great pressure on these guys, like you mentioned, and they have big shoes to fill. So I don't want to say, yeah, it's going to be a bang on season for Leeds. They're going to get in the top 10. It could also be a bad season for Leeds. So you never know. And Leeds is one of those clubs who may struggle, or they may go top 10, they may go 8th, 9th, who knows? So I don't want to make any, harsh judgment calls now and say, oh, Leeds is going to struggle, Leeds is going to do great. But I think looking at it objectively, these two players are set to be successful at this club, but we just got to see how overall. I mean, there's 7 other players that are going to be on. Is that no? My math's terrible. There's 9 other players that are going to be on the field with them. So as excited as we want to be about these two, they're surrounded by a whole team. So let's hope that they could fill those big shoes that they're coming after.
Yeah, and most importantly, they're going to get play time, obviously barring injury. They're going to see the field, and that's really the most important thing you want from your most important players before the World Cup. And they're different types of players than the players that they're replacing. Obviously, Brendon Aaronson is not a true out-and-out winger like Rafinha is. Calvin Phillips is a much better passer than the likes of Tyler Adams, as he likes to dictate play. But where Tyler Adams thrives is breaking up play and just trying to be that all-action disruptor guy. Yeah, he can pass the ball, but that's not his best attributes. And he's going to love the physicality of the Premier League, isn't he? I mean, Tyler Adams is going to be not quite the Roy Keane type of guy, but he's going to be sliding into challenges, the physicality, the chippiness, the bitterness, screaming at referees, just the passion and gritty type player that, Premier League fans have almost made into cult heroes. Tyler Adams can 100% be that at Leeds.
Yeah, and what better club to be at than Leeds if you're looking for kind of the chippy, really style of play that you learn in CONCACAF. It's like these guys are they've had their prerequisites filled out for the Premier League, just by playing Mexico, playing Honduras, playing Costa Rica. Like these guys should have that part of the game on lock. I mean, not to mention their other attributes. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing them bring some of that CONCACAF play to the Premier League.
It's going to be interesting to see if any other Americans end up at Leeds United. I think after those two moves, and obviously with Jesse Marsch being the coach there, it's kind of gone a little bit overboard with, they're interested in this American player. If there's a good American player who might be in the market for a move, it's like, he's going to Leeds.
Yeah,
and I think,
let's go.
And I think that's not the case with these two players. Those were two strategic buys. Like, I'm pretty sure Leeds, the links with Brendon Aaronson were before Jesse Marsch even took over. And Tyler Adams, obviously, is a player who wasn't an everyday starter at Leipzig. So he's in the market for maybe not quite a step down, but a team that might be pushing for European play, but not an out-and-out Champions League team, just because he needs minutes before the World Cup.
Yeah, and I know everybody wants to joke, it's the American club over there, and oh, we're going to sign all the Americans, but I think these two guys definitely have, like you mentioned, they have the qualities, and they earned that move. They're not just moving there because they're American, and there's a couple other guys who have been respectfully earning their moves. Actually, maybe just one in particular, but I want to talk about the goalkeepers, because this has always been a big conversation for us when it comes to who's starting for our team. We've always said Zach Steffen because he's playing for the Premier League champions. But there's kind of been a twist to the tale now. MLS player Matt Turner has finally got his big move to really put his name into the argument. And whereas Zach Steffen is kind of moving the other way back. So let's talk about that. The goalkeepers.
Yeah.
Now.
Obviously, when you talk about Matt Turner, he's moved over from New England Revolution over to Arsenal, and he is expected to be the number 2 there, similarly to the way that Zach Steffen has been the number 2 to Ederson over with Man City. But Zach Steffen has taken that step down a little bit farther than I think we thought he would, down to the championship to be the number 1 for Middlesbrough. And we can start with Matt Turner, and career-wise, it makes sense for him based on where he is at his age. And when you listen to him in interviews, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for him to make a move to that big club. His value probably is never going to be higher in terms of his age, his form. This was his one opportunity to go play for Arsenal. But when you look at it from a World Cup aspect, he's probably not going to be playing week in and week out. He might just be getting the cup games, similarly the way that Steffen had over the last couple of years, because Aaron Ramsdale pretty much solidified himself as the number 1 in Arsenal last season.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, it's with Matt Turner, it's a player that definitely deserved that move. He earned that move with his form. I mean, with the national team and the MLS, but also, like you mentioned, it's something to consider. It's unique being in a World Cup year, because with such a big move, also is sort of a downgrade. It's like you're either a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond. And I think now Matt Turner, although he's in the big pond in the Premier League, he's not going to be one of the top goalkeepers in the league anymore. So he's not going to be starting week in, week out. Whereas Zach Steffen, I think he obviously did take a downgrade a little bit too far, in my opinion. I think he definitely could have gotten a move in the Premier League or even in somewhere in another top 5 league. But he was number 2 to Ederson, and now he probably is going to be number 1 at Borough. So who knows how this may play in either one of their favor.
Yeah, and you can see where the differing mindset in these moves from the player and their agents. Matt Turner wanted that dream move, that move of a lifetime, to represent one of the biggest clubs in the world. Zach Steffen kind of already got that, and he kind of saw his spot as the U.S. number 1 start to slip away because he wasn't playing games. He wasn't as sharp as the likes of Matt Turner was in these World Cup qualifying games, because he only got a couple of games this season. And we saw his form dip when he did end up playing for Manchester City, because, yeah, you're training every day, but training is a big difference from the pressure and just the speed of an actual match. And he's going to get that at Middlesbrough. It's going to be a very different style of play. I mean, Middlesbrough couldn't be farther from the way Man City played. So obviously, I think Man City, we saw Zach Steffen's ability to play with his feet and out from the back, something the U.S. are really trying to do, especially against the likes of a Wales and an Iran here in this upcoming World Cup. He kind of already has that, but now he's going to be in that position where he's going to have to make a lot of saves, because Middlesbrough in the championship, we all know how that league is played. It's very physical, it's quick, it's rough, it's gritty. And Middlesbrough are a low block side. So he's going to have to face a lot of shots. And I think that will almost help reinvigorate or prepare him to do the things that he has almost been lesser in. Because when you compare the two goalkeepers, we always say Zach Steffen, maybe not quite as good of a shot stopper, but in terms of his play outside of saving shots and taking crosses, that's where he has the edge on Matt Turner, where Matt Turner might be a better shot stopper, but doesn't quite have the ability that Zach Steffen has with his feet and in terms of claiming crosses and that type of thing.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about the deal with Zach Steffen too. It is a loan, so I mean it's a 1-year loan. So I don't know what the future holds, but he definitely may be returning to the Premier League. Who knows? Who knows what the issue is with Ederson? But I just think it's such an interesting situation because he was at Manchester City, where obviously Premier League champions, one of the best teams in the world, and you're not facing many shots. I mean, even if you want to talk about Ederson, he's not facing that many shots, and he's making mistakes as well. So, I mean, yeah, it's easy to point fingers at your number two and say, okay, go get a loan. But I mean, I think he just needs to be at a club where you're getting more
Playtime.
exactly, playtime and activity in general. I mean, even if you're playing at Manchester City, if he's finally playing in his cup game, we only saw him get one or two saves a game. That's just because of the caliber of the team that Manchester City is. So I think apart from just the playtime, like you said, at Borough, he's going to be facing a lot of shots. He's going to be put through the works. And for a goalkeeper, I guess depends who you are. It's a good thing to finally be called upon. So I think
He's almost going to be in that like championship version of the way that we always see maybe the keeper for like Burnley always leads the league in saves. You're never going to see the likes of an Ederson or an Allison lead the league in saves just because they don't face as many shots. With that being said, one of the best indicators of an elite world-class goalkeeper is when you don't do anything for 90 minutes, but that one time where you need to make that one-on-one save, you make it. And obviously, I don't think either of those players are quite on that level, but that's something that they might have to do especially in CONCACAF, but also against the likes of a Wales and Iran.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think who suits Zach Steffen for sure, because I mean, as much as you want to talk about downgrade, I mean, even for Ederson, man, he's not that kind of player who's gonna pull out like that one save per 90 minutes if he has a boring. I mean, we've seen him make his fair share of mistakes as well, both of those keepers. So I think for Zach Steffen's sake, someone who's looking to solidify his place in the World Cup, obviously Ederson, he's Brazilian. We're not talking about him. He's going to be Brazil's starting number one. But Zach Steffen, who has competition, he needs this kind of move. So I think it's good for him. Although we may want him to stay at the top flight, we got to look at in the unique circumstance of a World Cup year, we got to look at the what's best for the players.
And I think part of this is, I don't necessarily know that Zach Steffen wanted to leave Manchester City. I just think he wants to make sure he's starting against Wales come World Cup time. And that might have hurt his ability to get a higher quality type of loan, because maybe Manchester City weren't willing to give him up to another mid-table Premier League side. Because I think you and I are both in agreement that Zach Steffen is good enough to start for, the likes of a Burnley, that type of level of
dream
team.
Move, man. That would have been a dream move.
Something like just the level of club that's maybe, bottom half, but bottom middle tier Premier League side. That is where Zach Steffen and both Matt Turner, I think, fit in perfectly, because they would have faced a lot of shots. But Man City might not be willing to give up that to them, because those clubs would want to sign them on a permanent deal or a long-term basis. Whereas the likes of a Middlesbrough, who's just trying to get promoted and they're just going to figure it out afterwards, they could be more willing to take on a part-time player.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, it's 1-year deal, 1-year loan. Do you think he comes back after, or you think he's gone?
Yeah, I think it really depends on how good his World Cup is, because it could very well be that, let's say he goes to the World Cup and balls out, there could be a Premier League team, maybe someone in Ligue 1 in France or the Bundesliga that's like, oh, we need a goalkeeper, Zach Steffen. Just that World Cup effect where you ball out and all of a sudden all these clubs are begging at your door in that January transfer window.
The James Rodriguez effect.
Exactly. So that's definitely possible. Moving on to another position of very big controversy, however you want to say that word.
Controversy. Never heard that before.
Dude, I saw it on TV the other day. I don't know. Maybe I've been watching too much British people talk about soccer.
Fair enough.
But the striker position, there are two guys who probably right now aren't in that starting role. but both are probably fighting for one spot in that World Cup roster. Pefok and Haji Wright have both finalized moves to new clubs. Jordan Pefok has moved from Young Boys over to Union Berlin in the Bundesliga, so that's a little bit of an upgrade for him. And Haji Wright has made his move in Turkey to Antalyaspor. I believe I'm saying that right. Could be completely wrong. It's a tough word. But the club where he was on loan in the Turkish top tier last season and scored 14 goals for, he's playing for the same club.
Yeah, and I'm going to spare myself by trying to pronounce the name of Haji Wright's new club. But I think for both these guys, they're coming off of successful seasons, or they're, prolific goal scorers at their respective clubs. And for both of them, I think it's just a small step up. I think Pefok obviously is a little bit of a league ahead, being in the Bundesliga. But at the end of the day, we've seen Ferreira take the number one. We've seen Daryl Dike, when he was playing in the championship, take the spot for us in qualifying and whatnot. So I don't think it necessarily depends on where these guys are playing, as long as they're finding the back of the net, as long as they're getting consistent play time and performing to their best abilities. So knock on wood that both these guys are going to be able to continue that good form that they're coming from, and especially not even just good form, good minutes, because that especially is what's most important.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. You mentioned it. You know what? If these guys are on the field and scoring lots of goals, there's a good chance they're going to be in that World Cup squad, because the striker position is one where we don't know who those guys are going to be on the plane. There's kind of a group of them that if you're playing well, you're in good goal scoring form, you're on your way. And there are a lot of guys who, maybe might be off the radar or kind of fell off the map a little bit that you can't write out to have a great start to the season. Maybe a guy like Josh Sargent starts firing goals in the championship. Next thing you know, Josh Sargent's playing on fire. And Haji Wright, the goals have dried up. Pepe's not scoring goals in the Bundesliga. Josh Sargent's right back in the mix to being, starting that game against Wales. So this is such a delicate move for both of these players. Huge career-changing moves. And you got Jordan Pefok, who I think has proved he's ready for the step up. He dominated the Swiss League, scored a lot of goals there. We saw him make some impact in the Europa League. Now he's going to be doing it at the top tier in the Bundesliga, playing against really good defensive teams. He's going to get to test himself against the likes of a Bayern Munich, a Borussia Dortmund, a Bayer Leverkusen. So we're going to get to see him play against world-class players almost on a week in and week out basis. And then for Haji Wright, it's more of the same. We saw him make that move in Turkey permanent. He had a really good run of form at the end of last season. Let's see if he can continue it, if he can continue to be one of the best out-and-out strikers and establish himself in that mold of the best strikers in Turkey. Because if both of them do that, there's a real chance they have a good shot at being in. Unfortunately, there's probably not room for both of them in the squad. It's going to have to be one or the other if you really look down to it. And of course, we'll do that this summer. But that's just the harsh reality when you only have 26 players.
Yeah, and that's something that I was going to talk about too, because we so often talk about the striker conundrum. And I think just having 26 players gives us the opportunity to even give these guys a look. I mean, normally chances are, we're not considering someone like Haji Wright, depending on his form. I mean, he's in the Turkish league. We've got to be looking at somebody who's more prolific, somebody who's higher up, and somebody that we can for sure count on at the World Cup, because we only got 2 spots maybe for a striker. But having 26 now, it allows us to have this conversation. I mean, it gives these guys an opportunity to say, okay, there's another spot we're going for. I could be that guy. So I think, years ago, these guys, it may not be in the conversation talking about guys in the Turkish league, in the championship, wherever they may be. I mean, obviously MLS is there too, but just having that 26 spots kind of relieves the pressure of the whole striker conversation, because we're able to take one more guy. Obviously, it's a different story when we're talking about who's starting, because that comes with a different kind of responsibility. But I love the fact that these guys are pushing for that new spot, because either one of them can absolutely take it. And I love either way. They bring something new from the Josh Sargent, from the Jesus Ferreiras, the Daryl Dike's even. it seems like every one of our strikers offers something different. And in this delicate time that you mentioned, being right before World Cup,
Timing is everything.
Exactly.
Timing is everything. You're in the right form. You're on the plane.
It's crazy how, what kind of how dynamics change right before the World Cup, because, you could have, the worst season of your life, but you hit just a vein of awesome form and you're on that plane. So
especially, if you're not being looked at in a starting role, Greg Berhalter might have his mind completely made up that Jesus Ferreira is going to be the starting striker when the World Cup kicks off. That's very possible. And he's looking for a guy to come off the bench. And with there only being a week of camp in November, right before the World Cup, where they usually have a month in previous World Cups, just based on when it is situated within the calendar of the year, scoring goals in form is probably the most important thing. It might be, okay, maybe they haven't played as much together with these guys as recently, so maybe the chemistry isn't as quite there. But when you're coming off the bench, you want to know that if, let's say, Christian Pulisic is bombing down that left wing and he whips a good cross in, is the guy in the middle going to be able to put the ball in the back of the net? That is the most important thing at the moment, especially if you're coming off the bench. So form is crucial for these guys.
Yeah.
Another guy.
Go for it. No, I was just going to say chemistry is something that's going to be an issue for
every team,
all the teams at the World Cup. So, like you mentioned, the most important thing right now is that you're in form, because chemistry is not something that we may have the luxury to fine tune. So at least have these guys find in the back of the net, whoever it is. And we love to see it, whether it's in German league, Turkish league. Let's see these boys perform.
Another position where chemistry and form are both going to come into effect is the center back role. Obviously, we know, unfortunately, Miles Robinson, who is playing very, very well alongside Walker Zimmerman, tore his Achilles, the same injury that Aaron Long had about a year ago. So it looks like he probably won't be ready for that World Cup. Maybe he has a miraculous recovery and is ready in time, but you just can't rely on someone to be coming off a devastating injury like that to be all that he has been over the, prior to that injury. And a guy that just got a move or is pretty much solidifying his move to Crystal Palace is Chris Richards. We know the type of talent this guy is. He played phenomenal at times for Hoffenheim last season. He's been been a bright spot when he's played for the national team. It's just the injuries for him have really just not allowed him to establish himself within the national team as a stalwart. We know he's got the talent, and he definitely is going to be a name in the hat to be pairing Walker Zimmerman at the World Cup.
Yeah, and I think obviously it's great to see more Americans in the Premier League, but my concern is where Chris Richards is going to lie on the team sheet for Crystal Palace. I mean, obviously he hasn't had a ton of game time as is, injuries, whatnot. But we've been talking about this whole episode that it's important to have the game time. It's important to have the form. So, Chris Richards, who else are Crystal Palace's defenders right now?
Let's take a look. The old handy Google.
Yeah, let's see who they have, because this is something that, if he's butting in the Premier League week in, week out without injuries, fingers crossed, he definitely has his shot at solidifying that spot next to Walker Zimmerman. But you know that Long is going to be playing in the MLS. He's going to have that game time. So if Richards is not, the pendulum's going to swing in someone's favor.
Yeah, and I'm looking at their squad right now, the likes of Joel Ward, obviously Nathaniel Klein being a wing back, Nathan Ferguson, Tyreek Mitchell. So, Daniel Quick, he's definitely going to be in a position that he's going to play, and it's going to be a crash course defending. Like, Crystal Palace is going to be a team that's going to be on the back foot a lot this season. So in terms of just developing maybe the game that's not quite as developed as he's used to, just being in more of a possession-based teams, playing with Hoffenheim, a Europa League style team. And then obviously when he played for Bayern, they're dominating almost every game that they play in. He's going to get a lot of defending. You're going to have to do a lot of clearing, deal with a ton of crosses type of thing, almost playing for one of those low block teams. And that's a real asset because it's very possible that the US are going to be playing that style against the likes of England in the group stage, and then beyond in the knockout stages, if you go play some of those top European and South American nations who are just a little bit more developed as a team and as players.
Yeah, and that's something that we could take out of the goalkeeper conversation as well is maybe it's in these guys' favor to get their battered with the ball week in, week out, because that just gives them more experience. You have more experience tackling, more experience in the air, challenging duels, whatnot. So it's just going to be a clinic over at Crystal Palace, which is definitely a good thing. I mean, get as much experience as you can. Nobody's saying that he's going to be a stalwart and lead Crystal Palace to clean sheet after clean sheet, but at least get that experience and in tackling, in being solidifying formation, building out the back, all that sort of thing.
And a point to note here, and this isn't something we've mentioned yet today about any of the players moving to the English teams. He's going to be going up against a lot of the players that he'll be facing come World Cup time with the likes of England and Wales. I'm not saying that's the end all be all, but there's definitely something in the back of Greg Berhalter's mind that's going to be thinking when he's picking these squads, when he's picking these starting 11s, oh, he's played against Harry Kane. He's played against Raheem Sterling, against Mason Mount, against Harry Wilson, those type of players, whether it's England, Wales. Oh, he's used to playing against these guys. He's played against them. We've seen him go up against these players. He's made mistakes against them. He's comfortable playing against the style of players that he's going against. So that's maybe something that goes into the thought process of maybe I'm going to go move over to the UK. And that's just another added thing that he has, whether it be a mental thing or just a comfortability thing against your opposition. And obviously that goes both ways, but that's still a small factor that could play into it if all else is equal.
Yeah, and I think apart from just having the abilities, getting to get more practice under your belt, just whatever, like we were talking about, heading, clearances, whatnot. But Greg Berhalter can also use this as an opportunity to see what situations Chris Richards fits best in. Like we said, we have 26 players that we could bring now. So if Berhalter sees that Richards fits better in one circumstance versus in another, maybe we bring him so that he could play against Iran rather than have two ball-playing center backs play against England,
And Chris Richards has probably one of, if not the highest ceiling of any of our young defenders or defenders that we have, playing the center back position, because he is everything you want from a physical stature. He's tall, he's fast, he's strong. He can play out with the ball at his feet. He's had experienced that his entire life growing up through Bayern Munich and onto Hoffenheim and everything. And now I think the part we talked about in his game that needed a little bit more development is the defensive side. And he's going to have to do a lot of that this season. So for Chris Richards, I think kid just got to stay on the field. If he can avoid injury and play week in and week out, 100% he'll be on the plane. 100% if he plays week in and week out and performs to the level we know he's capable of doing, he'll be on that plane. A couple other moves to note. Shaq Moore has gone from the CD Turdafi, I can't remember how to say that name, either another tough club name, but over in Spain to Nashville in the MLS. So that's going to be good for him, maybe to get more exposure in terms of a national team thing. He's going to be right in Greg Berhalter's backyard. He's going to be right on the screen. I think he's a guy that's a fringe player. I think he's probably on the outside looking in that, maybe needs an injury to the likes of a DeAndre Yedlin to get into the squad. But Shaq Moore, we saw him have a great Gold Cup. That's another player to note. Luca Della Torre, a player who started to really establish himself as a good squad player, has gone over to Celta Vigo. And that's a move that has actually low-key, under the radar, gotten a lot of hype.
Yeah, I think that's a huge jump over to Celta Vigo. And as we've seen him perform for the national team, he's a very exciting player. So I would love, I think, another fringe player to mention, but I would love for this guy to be someone who can just make it in. because I think he has something to offer. We've seen that. We've
Mhm.
seen him when he's playing his best. We've seen him take control and really influence the national team, in for the best. So I would love for him to have a good say at Celta Vigo and be one of those French players that makes it onto the squad.
His playmaking ability and style is just different than anyone else that we really have in the squad at this moment. And I think the Spanish game really suits the way that he plays. He's almost, I'm not going to try and compare him to an Andres Iniesta, but that mold of player, that style of play, that's the type of player that Luca de la Torre tries to be. And I think the Spanish game can really do that. And Celta Vigo is probably the right move for him. It's not quite, at the top of Spanish football, but they're going to be pushing for Europe. And I think that's really where he can thrive. Another guy that we really got to talk about is someone that Greg Berhalter has been talking about a lot, and he's without a club, and that's John Brooks. Obviously, ask us 6 months ago, even John Brooks is starting center back. He's our most important defender. A year ago, that was to be in this situation that he's in, where he's probably on the outside looking in at the moment in terms of the squad for Qatar. That would have been almost unimaginable. And Greg Berhalter said the reason he kind of faded out a little bit was his performances, especially in that Canada window, weren't great. And the way that the US are trying to play, Wolfsburg have been playing a different style because they don't play quite as a high line as the US are trying to do. And he needs to improve in his ability to defend when players are running behind him. So, Greg was pretty much telling in that interview, and he said he pretty much told him, John Brooks, if he wants to be in the squad, needs to play for a team that has a similar system to the US and prove that he can do where he was lacking.
Yeah, and it makes you kind of think, as much as we love John Brooks, I mean, I think he brings the leadership aspect. He brings the experience that none of the other players in the squad have.
And he's the best ball playing ability that we have. We saw Walker Zimmerman do a much better job than he had in the past. I think that's one of the biggest reasons Walker Zimmerman has established himself to where he is. But John Brooks is just on a whole other level in terms of his passing and ability to play out from the back.
Yeah, and look, there's not many United States fans that you can ask who wouldn't say that John Brooks is one of their top picks because of his leadership, because of his ability, like you said. His leadership is something that no other player on our squad has. Literally,
experience. He's been to a World Cup.
Exactly. Literally, no other player can replicate his experience, his leadership. If anything, that is his one thing to offer apart from just his ability. But I think the one thing that's pushing him out is just the style of play, because it just may be a matter of the old guard, it's handing it off to the new guard now, because John Brooks is one of those guys who played with Michael Bradley, Jermaine Jones, the rest of them, who with that old national team, how they used to play. But with this new way that Greg Berhalter is trying to develop, this new style, this attacking prowess that he's trying to build, it may just not suit John Brooks, and which is it's sad to say that he might be on his way out, because everybody loves him, like I said. But if he's one of those old players that we're getting rid of next, it may just be the cycle of
the Miles Robinson injury really opens a pathway back to the national team for John Brooks, though. I think that's something we can't overlook, because he's a left-footed ball-playing center back. He could easily slot right there into or next to Walker Zimmerman into that left-sided center half position. And I think he definitely has a real shot at it if he finds a new club and proves that he can defend with space behind him and where players are trying to make those runs and deal with balls over the top, because that's something he hasn't really done with as a club, and he struggled with the national team, as I mentioned earlier. And that kind of just brings us to the next talking point regarding John Brooks. Where do you think he could go? Like, what are the types of moves or a type of place or a club that you really think that would suit him in terms of getting on that plane to Qatar, or just reinvigorating, reigniting his national team and career in general?
Yeah, I think there's one place without a doubt. He needs to go to the MLS. He needs to be back in America, and I think just get consistent minutes. I mean, there's always going to be those situations where the MLS may be a lower tier, but it may be an opportunity to get some of these get what's the word? Get introduced to this different style of play, because depending on which team he may go to, it's gonna be at a lower level, but it's gonna be an introduction to what Greg Berhalter may want. We see obviously Walker Zimmerman is capable. He plays in the MLS and he has exactly what Berhalter is asking of a center defensive player. And so I think that is ultimately what John Brooks needs right now, somewhere where he's kind of in the spotlight, where he can be focused on and be successful. And that MLS, I think it suits him.
And as a free agent, he can go literally anywhere. He doesn't have to work out a transfer fee or anything like that. And I think, the clubs that would probably be most interested or immediately interested in John Brooks are the lower level Bundesliga teams. And I don't think that's the move that he needs. And maybe that's why he hasn't already signed with another German club, because going to the likes of a Dusseldorf or something like that, where they're going to be on the back foot, that's not what Greg Berhalter wants to see out of him. He wants to see if you can play as a center back when the team is on the front foot. So maybe the MLS is the right move for him. And there's no doubt in my mind that in terms of quality as a player, he can step into almost any MLS team and start right away and start playing. So maybe that's something he has to do with his agent. But it's also probably, maybe in the player's ego to try and stay in Europe. Because maybe once you leave Europe, it's probably very, very difficult to get back. I can't really think of another player other than maybe Jermaine Defoe that was successful in Europe, came to the MLS, and then went back and still had success over in Europe. Everybody else pretty much, at one point stage in their career, when it's kind of on the back half of it, comes over to MLS. That's kind of where they play out the rest of their elite playing days, or maybe not elite, but of their quality best years in the US. It's hard to go back over.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue with John Brooks is that the only European moves that I could see him getting are the lower level ones, where he's going to be in a low block, where he's going to be defending for 90 minutes, where he's not going to get to show himself off to Berhalter in the way that he needs to. The only place that he could realistically go is to the MLS. That's the only place where he's going to be chosen as a starter in an attacking team that's going to be on the front foot.
Yeah, I don't think he'd get a Power 5, or not a Power 5, but just college football brain was pumping right there. But I don't think, like you mentioned, he's not going to get a top 5 European League upper half club offer where he's going to be playing week in and week out. He will, if he wants to play in a top 5 league, he's going to have to play. And, like you mentioned, the low block teams, maybe he goes to somewhere in the Dutch league, could definitely see that happening, or the Belgian. But even then, you're just going to be kind of out of the spotlight. The MLS might be just the best option for him in terms of when John Brooks comes to the MLS, or if he comes to the MLS, that club is going to be, it's going to be a big deal. In terms of the press, social media, the fans, that's a recognizable name. It's gonna have some hype behind it.
Yeah, not just the media wise. I think just impact of him as a player. I think he will. I mean, you see Chiellini going to LAFC. He is another signing like that, who he could take a team with terrible defense as a free agent and bring them, to the next level. So I think he should go to a team where he could be that guy. He could be the leader off the back.
Oh yeah, he walks into an MLS locker room. The other players are gonna be like, "Whoa, that's John Brooks. He's played over in Europe. He played in the Bundesliga for a while. He played for Wolfsburg in the Champions League. He played at the World Cup and scored a goal at the World Cup. We want to be like him. He's that instant leader there." So I think that'd be a great option for John Brooks.
Yeah, it's. I mean, going to Belgium, Dutch league or wherever, that's different when you're a defender. You know, nobody's paying attention to how the center backs are doing against who knows who. But you know, for example, I mean, when you talk about Pfog or Haji Wright, that the reason we know about these guys in those sort of leagues is because they're banging goals in. Exactly. That's the kind of stuff that gets attention, but nobody's focusing on the center backs in these leagues. I mean, you could, but I think if John Brooks wants to be recognized, he needs to go to the MLS.
Yeah, I mean, think Eric Palmer-Brown. He's playing over in Austria. Yeah, the national team scouts him because they know about him. Obviously, just that's their job. But if you ask the average American fan when Eric Palmer-Brown popped up at these last set of international friendlies, they're all kind of like, "Who is this guy? Where does he play? Huh? Where's John Brooks?" That's the type of thing.
Look at Matt Miazga too. I mean, he kind of forgot about him.
Yep.
All right, and then there's just one player that I want to talk about that has been really interesting to talk about, just really entertaining, really fun, and that's Tim Weah, man. He's just it's really awesome to see his growth, but it's also intriguing knowing all the other players that are growing at the same time and where his position is going to be. But right now, dude, he is unstoppable. Tim Weah, man.
I mean,
have to talk about it.
Yeah, like you said, a guy that I have been dying to talk about because we haven't done an episode since these last windows. And he is a player that is just constantly making things happen in a positive way when he's on the field for the U.S. men's national team. I mean, when you just go through my notes from these games against Morocco, be like, oh, great cross from Timothy Weah, once again causing pressure, breaking that defensive line, whipping a cross in, just constant stuff like that. And then all of a sudden he scores an absolute missile thunderbolt against Morocco. He's providing assists, scoring goals. He, for the U.S. men's national team, I think has solidified himself as almost like the second most important attacking player behind Christian Pulisic. And at times, he's even been more consistent in his ability throughout the course of a match to constantly be dangerous when attacking the opposition.
Yeah, I think what he brings is sort of like a Brendon Aaronson kind of dynamic where he's direct. Christian Pulisic is someone who's pulling the strings and trying to make stuff happen, quick 1-2s, movement, making runs. But Weah is just driven towards that goal.
He goes right at the defenders. He's going right to the direction.
Goal. Boom. And I think more often than not, it's been successful for him. I mean, he like every game with the national team that he's been playing as of late, he's been just a threat. Just a nightmare for the opposition defense because of just how direct and how hungry he is to get at that opposing goal. And it's like you said, it's brought him to that point where he's almost a nailed on guy for us. But it brings up an interesting conversation with the other attacking players we got. But man,
it's a great problem to have.
Exactly.
I mean, Brendon Aaronson, the guy that we were just talking about earlier in this podcast, I think he's going to do spectacular in the Premier League with Leeds, but he probably right now doesn't get into my starting 11 for the U.S. because of Timothy Weah and how much of an impact that he has had in recent games over the last probably 6 or so months. You could make the argument he's been the best player for the U.S. period. He's been that good.
And it's not a bad thing too, like you said, to have these two sort of players fighting for that kind of thing. They bring different things to the table, and where one game we might want Timothy Weah starting, another game we might want this dude coming off the bench and just wreaking havoc off the bench.
He offers something different. He is so fast and so direct that any defender in the world is going to have issues with him. And for him, it's the same problem that it's been for a lot of the players that we have in the attacking roles. It's just injuries. When he's on the field, he's spectacular. So for him, I think it's just nailing down a starting role at Lille and playing week in and week out, because when this guy is on the field, he's absolute dynamite.
I think at Lille too. He's also been great since coming back from injury for Lille. I mean, he's just bringing the same sort of energy to the national team that he is to the club. So that's great to see, because Tim Weah is a player who's just been, like you mentioned, riddled with injuries. one after another, injury here, injury there. But it seems like in the past year and a half, he's played his cards right when it comes to this upcoming World Cup. I mean, coming back from injury, putting his head down, just playing a game here and there, not pushing himself, and now slowly getting back a consistent run of form right before the World Cup, right before this next season starts. And I think he just played every single card right.
And, the thing that has been his biggest downfall, and that's injuries, was almost his way in, gave him his opportunity, because the likes of Gio Reyna, who a lot of us had penciled in on that right wing opposite of Christian Pulisic, it was like Gio Reyna on that one side. And then we have Aronson and Weah coming off the bench and filling in here and there. And there have been talks about having Timothy Weah move up to striker. That's been a thought I've even had, but he's been so good and so dominant on that right side. It's almost like you don't want to take him away from that because he's doing so many good things. I mean, there have been games where he is absolutely dominated. Like, he's been the best player on the field in some of these games. I'm thinking of Morocco and Mexico just off the top of my head, where I was watching this and I was like, Tim Weah is unstoppable right now. And you're telling me that Iran can stop that Ben Davies is at Wales is not going to struggle with that against the England back 3, back 5 system with their overlapping wingbacks? You're telling me that's not going to cause them issues? I mean, Harry Maguire, you're a Manchester United fan. Harry Maguire with Timothy Weah running at him on the right wing, one-on-one defending. What is going to happen?
Dude, Harry Maguire is going to struggle with
Bradford
Wright Phillips and is at age 39. So that's not saying too much.
No, I know, but you know what I mean. Like, he is
exactly
a problem causer for the opposition, and he's become one of, if not my favorite player to watch over the last, honestly, since the start of this year. I mean, if we want to talk about American Player of the Year, halfway through 2022 awards, Timothy Weah is damn near the top of the list, if not the top guy. I think alongside Walker Zimmerman, I think those two dudes are right there, neck and neck.
They do have an award for that. I mean, young player of the year, and I think obviously in the past it's been Gio Reyna who's been that guy who we're all getting so excited about, all drooling over. But Tim Weah now, it's just that young player. I mean, only 22. I mean, he's got all those injuries and still come back, and he's still only 22, and he just has a long way to go. I mean, it's crazy to think, because we've seen Tim Weah around for how many years. We've always been begging for this guy to burst onto the scene because we've known his potential. I feel like we've heard the name Tim Weah since 2016, and now it's finally starting to pay off after all those injuries. Knock on wood that there's none before this World Cup. But on the path he's on right now, it's a warpath. This man, he's put all that frustration from injury and just got that mental game on lock to the point of just playing his best game now. While he's finally fit, while he's finally, his body is healthy, he's putting it all out there. I love to see it every chance. I mean, it's regardless of where he is, which is why I don't get why we don't try him as striker. Maybe we've seen him play even right back, and he's had the best game of his life. We've seen him just play wherever, and he's always influential.
Even when it doesn't work out, he's got that short memory, almost like you hear him talk about in the NFL all the time about you throw an interception as a quarterback, you just got to forget about it and go on. He's got that mentality on the wing. It's like when he's going at it, if a defender stops him and kicks the ball out of bounds, or a pass that he tries to feed through to the striker, or a cross doesn't work out, he just forgets about it and does it again and again and again and again and again and again. And eventually that ball is going to be in the right place to set up a goal or a great scoring opportunity. And he is so quick to get shots off too. That is another thing that is really impressive about him. And some players, it's like, I got to dance around a little bit, try and open it up to get that perfect shot. Tim Weah, he gets a half yard of space, he's smashing it at the goal. And when it goes in, like we saw against Morocco, he's got shooting from range too. He is a type of player that, if he can stay fit, can go to the very, very top of the game. He has all the talent in the world to be one of the better wingers in all of Europe. I think we forget about him and his talent sometimes because of how long he was out for. And for the fact that he wasn't playing every day for Lille. But a lot of that just had to do with the fact that he hadn't played in forever, so he wasn't fully crisp. And now that he's back and firing, I mean, we talked about guys earlier in the full podcast episode that could possibly have a great World Cup and get a massive move. Tim Weah is one of those guys that you could see a lot of people around both Europe and America are going to find out about, because I mean, he is, if he's fit and firing, he is a spectacular, spectacular player.
Yeah, and that's just thinking about that. I mean, much of Europe knows obviously about Weston McKennie, Sergio Dest, Christian Pulisic, whatever, Gio Reyna, but not many people are familiar with Tim Weah. I mean, he's been playing in France. He's just been a bit quiet with his club career because of the injuries and whatnot.
And he also isn't a player that puts up a ton of goals.
His goals aren't the big point of his game. I mean, it's just the energy, the directness. I mean, just how he presses against opposition defenses is a sight to behold. I mean, without trying to beat around the bush, but look, people are going to start seeing this guy, and I think he's going to start being one of those big names for us as long as he stays fit, because I don't see why he shouldn't be in the conversation along with Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Dest, because
that's the type of player he is.
Exactly. If he gets a big move, which I think after the World Cup,
100%.
Very well may.
You're telling me Tim Weah, he starts every game for just think about this. He starts every game for the U.S., scores a couple of goals, and just on the world view, just gets thrust onto the biggest stage in all of sports. And he plays his game to the way we know he can play his game. Oh, we're talking, there's probably, rumors of him making 50 million pound moves to the Premier League, to the Bundesliga, like to maybe some of the top teams in Serie A. He is going to be a sought after player if he plays the game that we know he can play at the World Cup. And if he does, that's a good thing, because that means the U.S. have a real shot to make something happen at this World Cup, because that's how good Tim Weah can be.
Yeah, I could without a doubt see Tim Weah be that guy who's getting, after the World Cup, getting his move to Wolves or Crystal Palace. I think, he's
especially when all the attention is going to be on Christian Pulisic.
Yeah,
I mean, think about it. Especially on the biggest stage, a lot of the opposition teams and the fans are all going to be focused on, what's Christian Pulisic going to do? What's Christian Pulisic going to do? And as they should. He is our best player and most important player. We're not saying that whatsoever. But Timothy Weah is pretty damn good.
Yeah, he's almost like our secret weapon. I mean, a lot of people know about him, but he's going to be causing some issues, and a lot of people are going to be turning their heads saying, "Who's this guy? Where'd he come from?" Which
is funny because, with Gio Reyna, everybody knows Gio Reyna. And I think maybe that's just because it was a Dortmund thing, and everyone should know Gio Reyna. He is a spectacular talent. We hope that he starts this new season with his hamstring fit and firing, because he is a spectacular player and another player with that. The sky is the limit for Gio. But Tim Weah's dad won a damn Ballon d'Or, and people just kind of forget about him. It's like he's the type of, he has all the aspects. He came up through PSG, and there was a lot of hype of him when he came through, but he missed basically 2 years because of injury, and everyone just kind of forgot about him. And it's like, really? Like, I mean, hey,
we see so many players like that. I mean, just think of Bayern. How many young players have gone through Bayern and then just been sent down to the German third league or something, But I think the one thing that has separated Tim Weah from players like that, I mean, playing at PSG and still being able to retain his level, is just the mentality, like we just talked about too. It's he's been riddled with so much in his career, his short career for a young guy, but he's always stayed focused on what he wants and what he's driven to do. And I think that if anything is going to take him places.
And also, he's got an infectious personality. He's a great guy to have in the dressing room and on the plane. You can tell a All the players in the squad love him. So he is an integral part both on and off the field for this U.S. men's national team. And hopefully we can see it all come to fruition and really make things happen.
Yep. Hopefully in November. It's coming up. Hopefully in November. As we've said multiple times for this far, I mean, knock on wood, there's no injury, but come November, let's bring it to the field some way.
Let's go, baby. Let's go.
That's a perfect way to end the episode, man. Because
dude, this has been fun. It's like I said at the beginning, it's the fun part, the fun, real stuff we got to talk about. We don't need to be criticizing, being like, oh, what the hell is Greg Berhalter doing? That's come World Cup time. We had plenty of that. And I mean, there'll be discussions where we have to be objective. And obviously, not that this wasn't objective, but we have to criticize and do all that stuff. But this is excitement. This is what we're here for. This is why we love this sport.
Yeah, dude, that conversation is like about, Tim Weah, just stuff that excites us, just
I mean, you saw the smile on our faces. If you're watching in video form, the inflections in our voices. I mean, I can barely breathe right now. I'm sick as a dog.
This is about to pass out.
I'm sick as a dog. But Timothy Weah, I got all sorts of energy. But yeah, no, this has been fun, and I can't wait to bring out more content. Thank you guys all for joining. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, share with all your friends, link with us on social media, all that good stuff. We'll see you guys very, very soon. See ya.
Peace, guys. Take it easy.
That's all we got for you on this edition of Stars and Strikes.
This is the place to be for anything and everything USMNT. Check out our other content on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
Make sure to hit like and subscribe. And also hit us up on social media as we follow the boys on their quest for glory in Qatar. We will see you real soon.